Hello and welcome. On today's Adventure in Visibility, we are going to be talking about the intersection of PR and social media and how that helps you get more visibility. I'm Denise Wakeman, your host and guide to better visibility on the web, and I'm very excited about my guest today. I recently heard her interviewed by my own business coach, Andrea Lee, plus I observed how she did a PR campaign for Andrea's recent book launch, which you might have seen me talking about and working on. And I was so impressed that I immediately invited Joanne McCall to be a guest on Adventures in Visibility so you could learn a little bit about how to incorporate PR into your visibility campaigns. With this pervasive use of social media these days, it's tempting to think that PR doesn't have a place anymore, that it's traditional and it's maybe not something that we want to include in our campaigns, but you would be very wrong to dismiss that at this point. So let me introduce Joanne quickly, and then we are going to start with the interview. The formal bio here we're going to go with is Joanne McCall is a media insider and veteran publicist. She knows how to capture the attention of national media. And again, I've seen this happen recently, and very, very impressive. She's on a first-name basis with hundreds of top-rung producers, editors, writers, and journalists. She secures coverage for clients including Brian Tracy, Ken Blanchard, Dave Ramsey, Andrea Lee, Suzanne Falter, the Deepak Chopra Center for Wellbeing, and the founder of NLP, Dr. Richard Bandler. So without further ado, welcome, Joanne.
Thank you, Denise. I'm really pleased to be here. You know, I've watched your show many times, and I've always learned something from the various experts that you have on. So my hope today is that I can share a couple of nuggets that might help others as they move forward. So thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I know because I learned so much from you that I know that others will too. So before I get started, I just want to see if I want to ask a question for the audience and see if anybody would like to share or admit that here's the question, when you launch something in your business, so whether you're launching a new program, a new product, a new business service, do you incorporate a PR campaign in that launch? So if you could just type in the comments whether or not you're doing PR campaigns, that'd be really helpful, just so we can get a sense of, where people are. And we'll address that. And if at any time you have questions for Joanne, just type them in and I'll do my best to get to them. So I want to start, Joanne, by first asking you to get for some clarity so that we can make sure that everybody's on the same page. And that is to talk about the distinction between publicity and PR, public relations.
That's a great place to start because often people use words interchangeably, which actually are a little bit different. So when you talk about PR or public relations, it really comes from a strategic communication that a business, an association, or a person uses in order to manage the public perception of that business or that person or that association. So it's kind of managing. Now with social media, a lot of that has changed, of course, but that's probably an entirely different conversation. But and publicity is really about having media, talking to media and having them cover your business, your product, yourself, whatever it is that you have to offer, it could be a cause, it could be an event, anything like that. It's getting media coverage. So they're just a little bit different.
So basically, you are doing public relations to get publicity.
Yes.
Okay. So they do work together. It's just
they do.
We need to make sure that we've got our lingo down correctly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So Things have changed so much in PR, in social, in media. It's just this evolving landscape, and it's really to keep up with things can be a full-time job, and which in our own industries we have to be on top of. So since I am not a publicist, and PR is something I kind of ignore because I don't understand it. If you could give us a sense of the landscape now, like how do public relations campaigns fit into the current landscape, and what's changed with media in the last few years?
I would say the bottom line to that question is really everything has very much integrated. So you may remember back in the day when social media came on the scene, there was constant talk about old media and new media, which we really don't hear so much anymore. Old media was the traditional legacy opportunities through magazines and newspapers, radio, television, that sort of thing. And the new media was the digital media. It was social media. It was people being able to interact. It was this whole new, shiny, wonderful opportunity. And it is. So over the years, this integration has taken place. Back when social media hit the scene, your traditional media really held all the cards. If you wanted to get exposure for your product, book, business, whatever it is, you had to go through the gatekeepers. You had to sell them on an idea that they wanted to then take to the general public, and that's how it worked. Well, when social media came along, they lost their candy. I mean, they really did. And of course, they went into denial initially. And they said, oh, this is just a trend. This is something the teenagers are doing. This is going to go away. It's just going to be this little thing. And those that went into denial for a really long time are no longer with us. However, many caught on, and many started to really watch what was happening and begin to integrate with what was happening. So, for example, you'd be very hard-pressed to find a magazine that didn't have a large online component. And you would also be very hard-pressed to find a television station that didn't have a website that was showing video of their evening newscast segments or the local morning show segments. So we've become very media-centric. With that, there are so many added opportunities for all of us that I think the important thing that I would love to share in this conversation with you today, Denise, is ways in which to do that, in which you can take whatever your message is for the world and find other vehicles for getting it out there. So yes, you can use your own networks. Social media is wonderful. You can just stick with that and do very, very well. And I like to look at it rather than either or. I like to look at it as both and. So you have that, but you also have all these other opportunities through these media outlets who have enormous audiences, many of them, that you can then tap into and grow your own followers. So that's it.
Yeah, so, I, of course, have noticed the changes as well over the years. And, it's still, you see the TV shows, like, let's say The Voice is one that, I watch. I admit, through confessions, I watch The Voice, and I like it. But they really integrate, like, social media with it. They are on Instagram, they're on Twitter, etc. So you're also seeing the news stations do that now, too. It's like my local news, like the NBC News, I'm seeing that they're like, okay, send us your, post on Instagram with this hashtag, and we're going to show your weather picture on the news. Yeah, so it's like we all are now media producers, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think another interesting notion to understand, or what's taking place, is that many average people, you and me, we are there when a news story breaks, and we can take a picture or a video, we could send it in, and we could talk about it on Twitter, all of that. And then what's happening, though, is people, when they hear a story break through social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, they then go to the big brands to get the details of the story. Right. That is really what's happening. So a person seeing a breaking story can share their view on it. But it's another thing to have trained journalists that go out, get different sides of the story, bring all of that together, do some research. I mean, so that's another way that they're really working together.
That's a really great point, because as you were saying that, I'm thinking about my own behavior. And it's the same thing. It's like I'll go watch, I'll go find it, online on the news station,
Mm-hmm.
on the or the New York Times or whatever. So there's still a piece that we're looking at around authority with the
Yes.
big brand new media sites, would you say?
I would. Well, trained journalists are trained to hopefully be objective and to research and get the story, and we want that. Now, one could also follow their Twitter feed. So if they want the details of the story, maybe not necessarily go to the television or go to the radio or the paper, but follow the feed from those organizations. But that's very much what's happening. I learned that from a friend of mine who's the digital manager of all the Gannett stations. They bought 250 TV stations, I think about 2 years ago. So he and I had this great conversation about, the research that they've done and the habits that they see people doing. And so these things are, happening together. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I just love watching how this all comes together. So that's the landscape kind of in a nutshell. So what does that mean, and how can we as business owners or entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, consultants, how can we harness that for ourselves? Because I can imagine that, let's say somebody like our colleague, Andrea Lee, she writes a book. Well, is it still like, well, I want to get into the New York Times, or, is it, are there other ways that you're now advising your clients to approach the media?
It's a wonderful question. We could, our entire rest of the conversation could be on this one. It's a really good one. So there's many different points I would love to make with this. And one is that many people have their eyes on top tier media like the New York Times or the Today Show or the Daily Show, the cream of the crop. But there are also so many other opportunities that may not have the huge circulation numbers or viewership numbers that those others do, but it could be made up of people who are very much in your niche. So there could be online sites or publications, media opportunities that have, say, 50,000 followers or 50,000 people who can consume this, but they're exactly who you want. So when you get a story placed there, you have the potential, if your objective is to get more business, you have the potential of reaching more of your people. So that's one thing to keep in mind. There's the major top tier that has huge viewership, and then there's more the niche ones that make more sense for you. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think something else to keep in mind is just the enormous number of opportunities now. So, for example, we mentioned TV stations. I mentioned it a little bit ago. And when you are pitching, it used to be TV was completely local. And they were restricted by the limited resources. Time. I mean, if there was a story 2 hours away, are they going to take 2 hours and travel to the story, get the story 2 hours back? They have to look at that. Resources, money, all those things, location. Now you can pitch television for any number of things because they're not necessarily constricted by those resources. So they can cover pretty much anything. And right. A lot of people don't even realize that. I mean, you look at TV websites, and they're carrying information from all kinds of other places. The other thing that they can do, all right, so in TV, for example, you could pitch local TV to be on the morning show maybe. You could also pitch their digital team. So what happens is in the morning, they sit down, the editorial team sits down, they look through all the pitches, all the news stories that are coming at them that day, and they decide, okay, this is for legacy, this is for legacy, this is for digital, this is for digital, this is for legacy, this is for digital. Right there, you've got enormous opportunities that most people don't take advantage of.
Okay, so one question. What is legacy?
It's the word that's replaced traditional.
Okay.
Legacy is television, radio, newspaper, magazines, legacy media.
Okay.
And they're becoming media. More. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then the
So,
rest is what goes on the website, et cetera, and on the social channels.
yes. Well, that's one way that they're making distinctions. Language is a funny thing, and it keeps changing, doesn't it? So
Right.
legacy is, I guess, a new term for some, but it's now what's being used as opposed to old media. It sounds like it has a future.
Right. It sounds like you're going to be there for the long haul too.
Right.
When I think of leaving a legacy, you're leaving that thing that people will remember, right? So, okay.
And moving forward into the future, into, something else.
Right.
So your question, how to harness that is a great one. And there are some things that really don't change. Believe it or not, there's some fundamentals that don't change. You have to have a great story. You have to have a great hook. So if you want to get coverage, you've got to come up with a way to capture their attention. And remember, media, those folks who do this for a living, they get paid for it on a daily basis and they're pitched all day long, have heard it all. So you want to come up with a way to give your information that's a little bit new, a little bit different. I had a client I worked with for a couple of years, and she's a career expert. And there are a lot of people in the career arena. However, I could always count on her to come up with tips that nobody had really heard before. So I would start out my pitches with that. I'd say, hey, I got someone who can give you info you haven't heard yet. And I immediately had them. I mean, they're like, really? Because they want something new. They have heard it all. So,
Right.
So if you have a business, you have a book, you have a product, you want to look at what is the story behind it? How can I capture someone's interest so that they know that this isn't as important as I know it is? And so then you want to start thinking like a producer or thinking like a journalist. And remember, they're inundated with it. So how are you different? I notice some people will go in thinking, I'm so special, they ought to cover me. But it's kind of the wrong attitude. You want to turn that around a little bit. And we do it in social media all the time, don't we? We give to others before we expect really to get something back. This is the same thing.
Right. Give to get.
Yes. Give to get.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine also that you talk a lot about the opportunities, that the opportunities are so much more diverse now, and that there's just so many more. And of course, that brings out, more competition as well. So
Yes.
do you have any tips for how to set yourself apart? Because, it seems like it all has been said and done. I mean, I sometimes kind of bemoan that. It's like, what can I say that's any different than anybody else? I've been around longer, I'm older.
I would add something else to that, Denise. Sometimes the things that we are really good at, we just don't think that they're any big deal because
Right.
there's so much a part of who we are. But to someone else looking at us, they're going, wow, I wish I could do that. I wish I knew what she knew. I wish I. So how do you go about that? I would say the first thing is to identify who your niche mates are. And I got that term from Suzanne Falter and Jeffrey Van Dyke. It's a word that's used instead of competition. So niche mates are those who share your space, right?
Okay.
So take a look at what they're doing and take a look at others that are pretty well known within your area, your genre, and look at how they're positioning themselves. Because the most important thing is to position yourself in a different way. It's part of your branding too. How are you different? So that you
Right.
want to start with that. This is how I'm different. So look at what others are doing and then really pay attention to the kind of advice that you give. Is anyone else sharing that kind of advice? As I said, looking for new ways to say something. You can. Sometimes it's a matter of having a conversation with someone who can say to you, here are the great things I see about you. And I would recommend that everybody do that. Go to those trusted individuals, not necessarily your family and friends, although they're wonderful too, but they're going to tell you they love you no matter what. You want some people who can give you, some constructive feedback, positive, and things that maybe you could do this a little bit better, or here are the really great things about you, and then really take a look at those and see if that's something that you can put forth. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree that it's sometimes hard to see those things about ourselves, and it can be very enlightening when somebody comes back at you and tells you what they see is different about you. So I think that's a great tip. And I just want to give a shout out to a few people here who are saying hello. Yay. And we have Andrea Beltrami. Yo, yo, yo. Yay. Saying yo, yo, yo. It's epic to see you two. And you're going to have to give her a smackdown because she's not doing any PR. So I just love Dre. I love her sassiness. And Bill Ashton says, I use PR at times, but not lately. And Bill, I know you've been launching some new stuff, so maybe it's time to start looking at that. Phyllis Benson, I haven't, but have clients that I'm trying to educate and then getting them to do so. So she knows that. We have Georgina Eggleston, who she says you are her publicist. So she's here online. And
she's wonderful.
She says she mentioned your wave, so I'll have to ask you about that because that is a very cool thing that you're doing. And Janica Smith saying hello, and things you're really good at are often things that you think are no big deal. So she totally agrees.
She's agreeing. Yep.
Yeah. So thank you all for your comments, and if you have any questions as we go along, be sure to post them down there on the comments. So let's talk about this wave that I heard you talk about on a private call with Andrea Lee. And it's different. So there, it's not what I hear other publicists talking about. So clearly that's what sets you apart. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about what that is and how it works for your clients, I think that would be interesting to the audience.
Well, a wave really is a way to do a national push that has a very set period of time. So rather than working with someone over 6 months and individually doing things, we set, it takes about a month, and we come up with some of your best material, and I pull my contacts who all have an interest in what it is you have to offer, because that's really key. And then we do a very significant push all at the same time. The beauty of it is we get a lot of feedback right away. And I don't know about you, but I kind of like instant gratification. I like to see results. I don't like to wait 6 months to see results. I just have a hard time with that. Maybe I need to meditate more. I don't know, but but I really do. And it's very satisfying because you see all the interest and it comes back. Now, from that point, you still have to land it. I mean, you still have to work with the media and figure out the angle that they want to take and that sort of thing, but you've gotten their attention. I think they like that too. So that's in a nutshell, that's what it is, a very concentrated effort. And the price point, quite frankly, is quite reasonable as opposed to having to go 6 months or a year or whatever. So would you say a more traditional way of working with a publicist is like over the long term of building things up and sending things out on a regular basis and just sort of creating awareness, versus this is just like, okay, here's this thing, go? Yes, I would say yes. But building, you do have to write the materials. You do have to come up with, what are the angles that media would really find interesting here? And those things do take some time. Positioning someone takes a little time. Making sure their social media is set in a way that you can capture this kind of interest is extremely important. So there are things that have to be in place first before you can do this. So there is some involvement along those lines. The branding has to be right and that sort of thing. I think it's because our world has sped up so much, there's so much immediate response now through social media and that sort of thing, that this way of doing things is much more satisfying for people because it kind of fits with where we're going.
Right.
That's what I would say.
There's a faster, things happen a lot quicker, and I think people are looking for that faster gratification. And, you mentioned making sure that their social media is, consistent with the message too, or I'm paraphrasing, and I was thinking about that as you were saying that it seems to me that that's got to be completely integrated, because if you're doing this wave campaign, journalists are people, right? Just like
Yes.
the prospects are people and your clients, and they're going to go check you out, right?
Yes.
They're going to
Yes.
say, before I commit to doing this, I need to make sure that everything matches, that I'm not promoting or writing about somebody who's a total flake or something like that. So
Yes.
how do you advise your clients around that in the sort of the consistent branding on all platforms?
Well, there's a certain amount I can help people with, and then I might encourage them to hire you. Okay. Really, you got to.
I didn't plant that. Okay.
It's important to have these pieces in order for the very thing you're saying. When you do an outreach, sometimes before they ever respond to you, they go and look for you first for exactly what you're talking about, Denise. So you want to make sure that they then see that your blog is updated, that, the branding is consistent, that you have a media room that media can go to and see if you have any releases, press releases posted, your pictures, anything that they might need. Engagement in your social arenas is so important. It's almost more important than the number. Well, it is. It's more important than the numbers, having the engagement. And in fact, when you pitch, very often, if you send something out there and you have a screenshot of how often it was shared or talked about, grab it, because that can be a part of your pitch. Hey, look at this. I have all this exposure and all this attention. That very much can make a difference. When it comes to hard news, everybody's going to cover it. When it comes to features, lifestyle, this sort of thing, they're looking for experts in that particular field. They're looking for people who are polished and know what they're doing. Now, there's always a caveat, right? There's always an outlier. So I will say this. I did an interview with a journalist at USA Today, and I asked her, I said, you interview a lot of authors. I said, do they have to have, a large publishing house? Can they be self-published? Do they have to have a lot of engagement for you to consider them? And she said, no. She said, actually, I will cover someone that doesn't necessarily have all that. If they have a really unique and interesting perspective, I will look at that. So that's kind of an outlier. Not everybody is that way, but some are. That said, building that platform is very important.
This is fascinating to me, because we could be talking about publishers. It's the same thing. It's very difficult for an author to get a publisher without the author having a platform, and the platform is the audience. And, this is something I harp on, I'm sure people would say I nag about, like, constantly, is that you've got to have an audience before you can even consider going to a public. No publisher is going to take you there. And if they do, you have to do all your own marketing, basically, at this point in time. If you're a big author, you might get your page in the New York Times, but what does that really do for you? Really? Do you really sell more books that way? I don't think so. So, okay, I went off on a tangent there. I apologize. What I'm seeing is a connection there, that when you're asking for publicity, the outlet is also looking for visibility.
Yes. They, too, are looking for you to be able to, they're going to cover you. You're going to tell all your social channels and the people you know. They know that. So it's a very mutual relationship now. It used to be they were the gatekeepers and they said, oh, you get permission and you do not. But that is not the case now. You can build all of this and create it. And very often when it comes to features and lifestyle things, the things that get covered in top-tier media bubble up from the social channels. It goes viral, something happens, everybody's talking about it. Next thing you know, you're seeing it on, the Today Show.
Right. Yeah, so this is a really interesting, turn of events, is that the media are looking for you to really partner with them in a way. And this is where the visibility comes from, is that they want your audience and you want their audience.
Exactly.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, it's true. Yes. Yeah. So to always be building that platform and your reach is a good thing. Now, let me share with you this. I've had a number of thought leaders come to me since last year. I'd say since about November, December of last year. Quite a number of them. And they have built these large networks and these large channels. They have a huge reach. When they launch something, I mean, they make some great sales. Their businesses are good, but they have plateaued. I've heard this from a number coming and talking about it, that now when they launch something, they get all these people subscribing. They get just as many unsubscribing. Because I don't know, people get tired, they get overwhelmed, they unsubscribe from everything. There's this kind of thing going on. So it's plateaued. So they're wanting to branch into this media piece of it.
Interesting. So this is it's another outlet. So really, what we were looking at initially with this conversation is, where's the intersection here between the traditional or legacy media and where does social media come in and cross over? And I think we're starting to see that is what we all have to look at as business owners. We have to look at that it's not just one, like you said, or the other. It's both and that you can't really ignore it. And that as business owners, we have to really be focused on building that audience all the time.
Mm-hmm. I think that if you wanted to just build your own networks and use joint venture partners, I mean, that's fine. If you want to just stick with that, that's fine. But I find that most entrepreneurs want to grow. It's something in our DNA. I want to reach more people. I want my message out there more. And so if that's the case, then bridging into this other piece and bringing it in, makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah, because I think that limits you eventually, like what you're saying.
Plateau.
People are, yeah, exactly. Okay, so what are some, as we are winding down here, what are some of the things, or maybe we can just sort of recap, or you can recap for us some of the things that we need to be looking at or considering when we're considering a PR campaign?
So you want to consider what your objectives are and what you ultimately want to have happen. So if you have a book, a product, it's helpful to have something that you're going out there with, because then it's like a hook. It's something to hang it on. Even when you watch Jimmy Fallon or whatever, and he has a guest on, or one of the late night comedians, they have a guest on. Usually they're pitching a movie, right? They have all this conversation, telling stories, but they get down to the movie. I'm in this movie, or I have this book. So it's nice. It's like a hook. It acts like a hook. It makes you current. It makes it a reason to have you on right now, is because you've got this. So that's the first thing, is having something. And then determining who you want to reach. And then what are your ideas? How do you hook people with what you have? How will media in particular be interested if you're going after that? Because it's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. With media, it's different from going to your own networks. Your own networks might say, oh yeah, I see the benefit there. Media, they're pretty jaded. They've seen it all. So you have to show them that this really is unique and different. So you want to spend some time, how are you unique and different? And then you want to build a media list. So I would say pay attention to who's covering your topic. You could do that through Google Alerts, right? Do an alert around your particular topic. Try to make it a little bit unique so that you're not inundated with Google Alert responses. Although I set up a file, they all go into there, and then when I'm ready, I go look at it. So I recommend that too. That's helpful. So Google your topic so that you know who's writing about it, and pay attention to who's doing a show on it, who's covering it, add them to your list, and then you can start building a relationship. You can follow them on Twitter. You can comment on their blog. When you comment on their blog, especially if you add something to the conversation, I'm preaching to the choir here, I think, but especially you, Denise, but if you add something new to the conversation, then, they notice you. They pay attention to that. So you want to do those things before you actually go to them and say, I'd like to do an interview with you, or would you write a piece on this with a story idea or something like that. So you want to build the social capital.
Right.
We come back to that all the time.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Build the social capital. And so it really is, you've got to, it's not just one day you wake up and say, okay, I need to do, I've got my book, now I need to do a press release. It's about really laying the groundwork first, and then it becomes time to do the campaign. So
Yes. I mean, when you see something hitting the scene and it's huge and it went in a big way, you can count on the fact it took some planning for that to happen.
yeah.
It doesn't just happen.
Yeah. So remember that, folks. So one of the things that we were talking about behind the scenes is that you like to incorporate adventure in your work. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that?
Everything's an adventure, especially when you're doing anything live, right? Like this.
Yes.
I mean, anything can happen, right? The sound goes out, the video goes down, you're not sure if people can hear you. And I think that being able to handle that with finesse and humor just makes you such a pro. I find anything live an adventure. Quick story. I was, my first career was in radio broadcasting, and in my city, we do this tree lighting ceremony the day after Thanksgiving. Everybody comes. There's thousands of people. It's called Portland's Living Room. Thousands of people. They televise this thing. The mayor speaks. There's groups singing. And I remember I was on stage with my coworker, and we were, emceeing this event, and there were all these they weren't stuffed animals, people in animals like Cinnamon Bear and Father Christmas dancing around, TV cameras and lights, and my coworker was talking and doing this thing, and suddenly he turned to me and he put his mic down and he said, "Joe, I just completely forgot what I was saying." And thank God I was listening, because there's lots of times I might not have been listening. I would have been thinking about what I was going to say next, busy and I picked up my mic and I was able to pick it up mid-sentence, and continue on. But that's the adventure of live is pretty exciting. I bet you have stories too.
Yeah, especially doing live hangouts.
Yep.
It's always an adventure. But I think also that when we look at it as an adventure, when we embrace some of these things as adventures, so embrace working with the media as an adventure, embrace being, new technology, because that's what we're dealing with here, whether it's with the media or whether it's with digital. It's going to be a much better experience than if we're always fretting about it or pissed off because it doesn't work the way we expect it to. So,
attitude is everything.
Yeah, that's that's my approach to it most of the time.
Great.
Sometimes I forget. So, the final question is, what has been your most memorable adventure? Life, travel, business, whatever. Such
a great question. In fact, I look forward to this part of your show every time I watch someone else. What are they going to say? So here it is. In my early 20s, I took a year off and traveled the world. And I ended up I was on my way to Goa. I was in India, on my way to Goa. And I was at this hotel called the Hotel Kapila, and it was midnight, and there was a full moon, and we were all up on the roof dancing. There was a band, and it was with a bunch of Brazilians. I love Brazilians. I mean, they're like, wow. And we were dancing and just having this great time. And it's just it was a moment in time that will be with me forever. And when I think of adventure, I think of things like that, moments that just go to your soul and you'll never forget them. And I know you have quite a few of them too. I've heard you share some of them. So travel is amazing. It's fabulous for that.
Yeah, gives you great perspective on the world, life, your business, everything. So I love that. I love that story. I think we have a lot in common, Joanne.
I think so too, Denise.
Okay, so what is the best place for people to find you online? And maybe you can talk a little bit about your quiz. Your media savvy quiz, which
you took, didn't you?
I took and discovered I am not media savvy at all. So,
well,
kind of scary.
No, I mean, you do fabulous, but it does ask questions that relate to going after, other media, the legacy, etc. So you can find me at joannemccall.com. And my email is joanne@joannemccall.com. Please, feel free to send me a note. Any questions, happy to answer it. The How Media Savvy Are You quiz is a quiz that will not only point out where you are in terms of these things, but it will point out the things that you need to learn about. I think that that's kind of the beauty of the questions. You read the question, you go, well, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good start, because that's what you need to know. And it's available. Do we have it on the blog post, Denise?
I posted a link below the video here on the event page, and
Wonderful.
Also it is on the blog at denisewakeman.com and
Excellent.
on your site too, joannesmediabootcamp.com.
Yes, another site, joannesmediabootcamp.com. It's available there, or you can email me, happy to send it. I think it's a really valuable way to kind of start, assess where you are, and then moving forward. The thing is, here's the bottom line. This is not brain surgery, right? Thank God. It's really, you guys, about relationship building. You're doing it in social media all the time. So we're just bringing in this kind of new element that maybe you're not familiar with yet, but you can be, and you can be very easily. And the next thing I know, we'll be seeing you in fantastic places, and we'll say, wow, they're doing really well. They ought to be on Denise's show.
Well, and it really is about expanding your reach and getting more visibility, because the more people who learn about you, beyond your circle that you're comfortable in, the more people that learn about you, see what you're doing, read your book, see your programs, etc. Those, the bigger impact you can have with the important work that you're doing, and that's the whole idea here is behind getting more media, and that's why Joanne's here to talk about it with us today.
Plus having those logos on your website can look pretty cool too.
Well, that's social proof or media proof, I guess.
Exactly.
In that case, yeah.
Yes. Shows you as an expert right away, so it's good.
Yeah.
This was wonderful.
Yeah, it's like, you have those little logos and you have the book, and okay, you're an expert now.
Yep.
Now you really are. Even though you were before, but without those little things, nobody believes it, I guess. Anyway.
Well, it helps. It helps.
No, I know. I'm being, kind of sarcastic here. Like, really, I have to do that now too? But,
Oh, I don't want to make it hard.
No.
Make it easy.
I think that's how people feel. I mean, I had that first kind of feeling too. It's like, oh shoot, I need to be dealing with that now too, but of course, if we want to grow, if we want our messages to get out to more people, we got to do what we got to do, right?
Well, and I understand having a moment of going, oh God, I got to learn something else. I mean, I've been there too, but as soon as you kind of experience that, then if we can move into the more curiosity, okay, right. What is this about? And you don't have to do everything all at once. It's just like little steps, little pieces. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Denise, as you build your social arena, it's one piece at a time. Nobody builds everything at once overnight, and our minds might want that, but it just doesn't work that way. Right. So the more we understand that.
Yeah, we see people who have it, and we think it just appeared, but no, it was step by step, layer by layer, and that's the way you just got to approach it, and then it's easier. So great.
I think it's kind of like when you watch a dancer who dances really, really well, and you think, I could do that. Because they do it so well. I could do that. Yeah, try it. I mean, they practiced a lot and they worked at it. And everything takes practice, absolutely everything. So, but I think it can be fun. And the more we can make fun and inject fun into it and curiosity, it's just more enjoyable. And I want things to be more enjoyable, and I know you do too. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Having fun is a much better way to do it. So, absolutely. Okay, we could go on with these analogies for, on and on. Anyway, so thank you very much to the audience for being here with us today. Thank you, Joanne, for sharing your wisdom with us today. You can get advance notice of future shows at adventuresinvisibility.com. If you prefer to take the show on the go with you, the show is also available as a podcast.
You can get it on Stitcher, SoundCloud, or iTunes, whatever you prefer. Just go to adventuresinvisibilitypodcast.com and you can sign up there. So, Joanne, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun, and I feel like I could have this conversation, keep going with this conversation for another few hours. So we'll have to get together one day.
That would be great. That would be great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time and being here today.
Okay. Thank you, and have an adventurous day, folks.